Female immaturity exposed, the dark psychology. Carl Jung warned about awakening to a hidden reality. Something feels off. You've sensed it, even if you can't quite put your finger on it. There's a pattern, certain women, certain behaviors, a persistent refusal to grow up. They cling to childish fantasies, expecting the world to solve their problems, and when it doesn't, they lash out or crumble completely. If you've ever been caught in their web, manipulated, drained, blamed, you already know the truth. Immaturity isn't just a phase. It's a mental prison that traps both those who live it and those around them. But before you assume this is a direct attack, listen carefully. This analysis isn't about them. It's about deep understanding. Because immaturity isn't random. It's a defensive shield, a protection mechanism rooted in fear, a fear buried so deeply in the subconscious that even those living with it can't always recognize it. Carl Jung and other behavioral analysts spent years dissecting this phenomenon through feminine archetypes: the girl, the princess, the wife, the sorceress. Each one is a reflection of a psyche trapped in its own emotional snare. But why do some never manage to break free? The social construction of immaturity. Consider this. Society romanticizes women as delicate beings, emotionally enlightened, even morally superior. But the inconvenient truth is that the female psyche, like the male psyche, is filled with hidden shadows. The only difference is that these shadows often wear the mask of sweetness, innocence, or fragility. How many times have you seen a grown woman throw a tantrum like a child? How often have you noticed that when things go wrong, the blame always falls on someone else, her father, boyfriend, society, fate, anyone except herself? That's the first sign of arrested development, the chronic inability to take personal responsibility. The modern educational system, paradoxically, contributes to this dynamic. From early on, girls are taught that extreme emotional expression is not only acceptable, but expected. They learn that tears can be more effective than logical arguments, that victimization can be a powerful tool of social control. This is where Jung's archetypes come into play. According to Jung, the female psyche evolves through distinct stages, moving from innocence to wisdom. But when this process stops, when a woman refuses to progress psychologically, immaturity settles in like a mental parasite. That's when we encounter women who appear physically adult but remain emotionally eternal children. The girl archetype, perpetual infantilization. First, we have the girl archetype, the most obvious and perhaps most dangerous. She categorically refuses to grow up, still expecting someone to protect, pamper, and provide for her. Her fragility isn't real. It's a sharp psychological weapon. She cries instead of reasoning, manipulates instead of negotiating, and never truly grasps that the world owes her absolutely nothing. The most disturbing aspect is how society actively reinforces this behavior. Women are constantly told it's perfectly acceptable to be delicate, that there will always be someone to rescue them. When brutal reality finally hits them, they're completely unprepared to handle it. This archetype manifests in relationships through extreme emotional dependence, childish jealousy, and a constant need for external validation. The girl never developed a solid sense of self-identity, so she defines her existence through others. When these others fail to meet her unrealistic expectations, emotional devastation is inevitable. Professionally, the girl avoids significant responsibilities, preferring roles that allow her to maintain her protected position. She may have talent, even brilliance, but never fully develops it, because that would require taking risks and accepting the possibility of failure. The princess archetype, disguised narcissism. Next comes the princess archetype, where immaturity transforms into toxic entitlement. This is the woman who believes she deserves everything without effort: love, success, happiness, all delivered on a silver platter. When life doesn't meet her grandiose expectations, she doesn't adapt. She rages. The princess sees herself as the center of the universe, and if reality dares to disagree, she interprets it as personal betrayal. This archetype is particularly prevalent in cultures that excessively value female beauty or social status. The princess learned early that her appearance or social position gives her power, but never developed real substance behind that facade. Relationships with the princess are exhausting because she constantly demands adoration and special treatment. She doesn't understand genuine reciprocity. She only knows how to receive, never how to truly give. When her partners inevitably tire of her parasitic nature, she's genuinely shocked and hurt. In professional environments, the princess expects promotions based on her charm or appearance, not competence. When confronted with constructive criticism or realistic performance expectations, she often resorts to accusations of discrimination or unfair treatment. The most destructive aspect of this archetype is her inability to form genuine human connections. The princess sees other people as extensions of her own need for validation, not as individuals with their own legitimate desires and needs. The sorceress archetype, when immaturity becomes power. But the most dangerous of all is the sorceress. At this stage, immaturity is no longer just defensive. It becomes a sophisticated offensive weapon. The sorceress is no longer just fragile or entitled. She's cunning, calculating, and dangerously manipulative. She wields seduction, psychological manipulation, and chaos creation to control others, all while avoiding confronting her own deep insecurities. She doesn't seek true love. She seeks absolute dominance. She doesn't want genuine connection. She wants human puppets to satisfy her whims. This is no longer just a defense mechanism. It's a calculated and well-sharpened weapon. The sorceress has developed a sophisticated understanding of human psychology, but uses this knowledge exclusively for personal exploitation. The sorceress is particularly dangerous because she often possesses exceptional intelligence and superficial charm. She may seem fascinating and attractive initially, but gradually reveals her predatory nature. She identifies her victims' emotional vulnerabilities and systematically exploits them. In intimate relationships, the sorceress uses advanced psychological manipulation techniques, gaslighting, social isolation of the victim, alternating between emotional reward and punishment. She creates psychological dependency in her partners, making it extremely difficult for them to break free from her toxic influence. Professionally, the sorceress often gravitates toward positions where she can exercise power over others: human resources, therapy, education, or politics. She uses these positions not to help, but to feed her need for control and manipulation. The historical route: obsolete survival strategy. Here's the part no one talks about. Female immaturity isn't just an individual issue. It's a symptom of something much bigger and more complex. For centuries, society has systematically infantilized women, rewarding helplessness, theatrics, and hysteria. It has persistently whispered that vulnerability is a valuable asset and that a woman's power lies in her dependence on others. But this is a cruel historical trap. The moment a woman refuses to grow psychologically, she locks herself into a life of perpetual dependence, always waiting for someone else to save her from her own choices and consequences. For most of human history, women had little control over their own destinies. They depended completely on a father, husband, or community for basic survival. Fragility, submission, and indecision weren't just social habits. They were literal survival tools. Acting helpless wasn't weakness. It was a strategy to ensure physical and economic protection. Playing the role of the girl, princess, or sorceress wasn't always a conscious decision. It was an evolutionary adaptation to a hostile environment. The fundamental problem is that the world has changed drastically. Society has evolved, but the ancestral psychological programming remains unchanged. And that's the real trap. The old script is still running, the one that worked, the one that made sense in a completely different world. The price of change, why growth is avoided. But times have changed radically, and the program is outdated. Yet many remain trapped in emotional childhood because, deep down, growing up comes with a terrifying price. Maturity means giving up external protection. It means admitting that no one is coming to save her. It means accepting that true power comes with corresponding responsibility, and responsibility is a heavy and constant burden. So what happens to those who manage to break free? Those who face their fears, take total responsibility, and reject the childish games that society still encourages. Society doesn't welcome them with open arms. It systematically punishes them. A mature, independent, self-aware woman is disturbing to the status quo. She's labeled as cold, difficult, unfeminine, because a woman who doesn't need saving is a woman who can't be easily controlled or manipulated. And that's the brutal truth. Immaturity is comfortable, it's easy, it's socially accepted, but it's also a cage that gets smaller with each passing year. The only way out is to face fear directly, abandon comfortable illusions, and reject roles that no longer serve personal growth. The modern identity crisis. Now ask yourself, if female immaturity was a survival strategy for millennia, what happens when it stops working? The answer is exactly what we're witnessing today. A massive and widespread identity crisis. When a woman can no longer depend completely on others, when manipulation consistently fails, when fragility no longer guarantees her an automatic safety net, panic sets in. She feels betrayed by a world that no longer treats her like a princess. And in that moment, new mechanisms emerge. Professional victimization, chronic resentment, and anger, all disguised as authentic empowerment. This isn't tied to a specific culture, country, or generation. It's everywhere. Women who blame the world for their failures because they were never taught to take real ownership of their lives. Women who reject maturity, labeling it as a patriarchal burden because immaturity was their established comfort zone. Women who look for authority figures to replace their fathers instead of becoming their own source of strength and direction. And note well, this isn't their individual fault. It's the result of centuries of social and psychological conditioning. The vicious cycle of social reward. The problem perpetuates because society continues rewarding these behaviors. Social media amplifies external validation. Reality shows celebrate emotional drama, and social movements sometimes confuse victimization with genuine empowerment. Young women observe and learn that tears can be more effective than competence, that accusations can substitute solid arguments, that provoking sympathy can be more rewarding than developing real skills. The educational system frequently fails to teach personal responsibility and critical thinking, preferring to focus on superficial self-esteem and emotional validation. This creates a generation of women who are technically educated but emotionally immature. Manipulation as power strategy. But there's an even darker dimension. Some women resist growth, not just because it means losing protection, but because they've discovered that immaturity gives them a specific type of manipulative power. This is where manipulation comes into play, because immaturity doesn't always look like weakness. Sometimes it looks like seduction, calculated drama, strategic victimization. It's the woman who cries when she doesn't get what she wants, the one who throws tantrums when facing opposition, the one who twists emotions to avoid confronting her own flaws and limitations. And the scariest part, it works consistently. We live in a society programmed to protect fragile women, excuse their actions, and justify their immaturity with a simple, "That's just how women are." And this is where the real danger begins, because when immaturity is never challenged or questioned, it's reinforced exponentially. The hidden cost of perpetual protection. Perpetual protection creates a specific type of psychological disability. When someone never faces real consequences for their actions, they never develop the emotional musculature necessary to deal with genuine adversities. This results in women who, at 30, 40, or 50 years old, still react to setbacks like wounded teenagers. They never learned to process rejection, failure, or criticism in a mature way because there was always someone to soften these blows. The result is an epidemic of emotional fragility disguised as strength, where any challenge to personal narrative is interpreted as attack or trauma. This not only harms the individual woman, but contaminates relationships, work environments, and even the next generation. The fundamental choice. So here's the real question. Is immaturity truly a conscious choice? And how many are willing to pay the real price of growth? Because in the end, there are only two paths: remain asleep and continue playing the established social game, or wake up completely. And awakening is painful, brutal, and often lonely. But the alternative, remaining trapped in a cycle of emotional dependence and manipulation, is much worse in the long run. The real question isn't whether these women can change, but whether they genuinely want to change. Because real change requires killing a part of oneself. It means abandoning the inner girl who made her feel special, the princess who expected to be saved, the sorceress who manipulated without remorse. It means standing exposed before reality, without masks, without games, without the luxury of illusion. And that's absolutely terrifying, because nothing is more brutal than realizing the world wasn't designed to cater to your needs or desires. Individual responsibility. So the choice is yours. You can continue playing the role you were given, keep pretending life owes you something, cling to a fragility that no longer serves you, or you can face yourself, your real self, without adornments or excuses. But if you choose to mature, be ready, because maturity isn't a reward, it's a permanent burden. It means accepting that no one else is to blame, that no one owes you anything, that every decision, every consequence, every hardship is yours to bear. It's a weight that crushes those who aren't truly ready for it. And the real question is, how many are genuinely prepared for this radical transformation? Conclusion. The necessary awakening. Immaturity isn't just a mindset, it's a psychological poison that seeps into every decision, every relationship, every wasted opportunity. It's the silent force behind cycles that never break, dreams that never materialize, and lives that never reach their true potential. The question no one dares ask is, what happens when immaturity becomes actively destructive? Because there's a difference between being immature and being helpless, and there's something far more dangerous, using immaturity as a deliberate weapon against others. The first step to liberation is recognizing that this pattern exists, not to judge or attack, but to understand its origin and function. The second step is consciously deciding whether you want to perpetuate this cycle or break it once and for all. The choice, as always, is individual, but the consequences affect everyone. Around